Welcome, my friends. Good morning. I am Reverend Karen LeBlanc, and I minister to this congregation as we minister to each other here. We are a people creating beloved community here at First Unitarian in New Bedford. We believe in practicing and promoting the Unitarian values of justice, equality, transformation, pluralism, interdependence, and generosity in our congregation, and that those values always spring from the love at the center that guides us all. We are people of purpose in this church. We work to make sure everyone feels valued and included here, regardless of race, color, nationality, age, physical or mental abilities, gender identity, economic status, how you believe, or who you love. If what you hear today resonates with you, we hope you will consider becoming part of this way cool community of seekers and keepers of this very long dream that is our church. First Unitarian recognizes that the land that we inhabit and enjoy sits on the unceded ancestral land of the Wampanoag. We give respect to the people of the First Light and their ancestors, and we honor them in this church. A couple little housekeeping notes. If you are new here and want more information about our church, you can fill this out, put it in the offertory basket, and that will put you on our newsletter list. There is coffee hour after the service right through that door over there. We are live streaming today. We will not be doing joys and concerns, so it shouldn't be an issue. And if you will put your phones into worship mode so we will not be interrupted.
Karen, I just want to mention the Good King Wenceslas has a repeated verse.
Okay.
I just want to warn you, we might be skipping that what's written as the third, the repeat of the second.
Good note. Let's see. Good King Wenceslas. Oh, I see. Yes, there's a verse that gets repeated at the end, so we will strike one of those repeated verses, I'm sure. Yes, we'll thank you for looking at that, though, pointing that out to me, Randy. Okay, who would like to light our chalice? Would you do that for me, Lynn, since you're closest? So today's service is a special, different sort of service. We will be enjoying A Child's Christmas in Wales by Dylan Thomas today. The chalice lighting words are from Dylan Thomas. Light breaks where no sun shines, where no sea runs the waters of the heart in push in their tides. And now let us stand up. Going to do a little quick movement before we sing. Let's raise our arms and take a few deep breaths. Stretch a little bit. This is like a 25-minute piece you're going to be sitting for, so take advantage right now. Just a few good breaths in. Oh, weekend's almost over, but we still got a little bit left, so let's enjoy it right now. Oh, one last one. Give me some cactus arms like this. Push your heart out. Oh, send in all that love. Give yourself some love. Spread that love out into the world where it needs it so much. Okay, that feels good. Stay standing, because we're going to sing. All right, number 409 in your gray hymnal. You might recognize this song. Okay.
I
Now you may be seated. So this performance today is dedicated to the memory of Maggie Peirce, who we had her memorial service here yesterday. She used to perform this here up in Triworks on this pulpit, so did Bill Van Voris, a bunch of other people. And I didn't even know that this had become a tradition a long time ago in this church, so I'm actually bringing it back. I thought I was starting something. You're never starting something new in a 300-year-old organization. So this is dedicated to Maggie and dedicated to the memory of my son, Dylan Amadeus McGowan, who was named after Dylan Thomas as well. And I should probably dedicate it to my dad, because I got this from my father when I was probably 6 or 7 years old. We had the record at our house, and he was a great fan of Dylan Thomas, so it all goes back to, thanks, Dad. Okay. Give me a sec, because this is hard. Okay. One Christmas was so much like another in those years around the Seatown corner now, and out of all sound except the distant speaking of the voices I sometimes hear a moment before sleep, that I can never remember whether it snowed for 6 days and 6 nights when I was 12, or whether it snowed for 12 days and 12 nights when I was 6. All the Christmases roll down toward the two-tongued sea like a cold and headlong moon, bundling down the sky that was our street. And they stop at the rim of the ice-edged, fish-freezing waves, and I plunge my hand in the snow and bring out whatever I can find. In goes my hand into that wool-white, bell-tongued ball of holidays resting at the rim of the carol-singing sea, and out come Mrs. Prothero and the firemen. It was on the afternoon of Christmas Eve, and I was in Mrs. Prothero's garden, waiting for the cats with her son Jim. It was snowing. It was always snowing at Christmas. December in my memory is white as Lapland, though there were no reindeers. But there were cats. Patient, cold, and callous, our hands wrapped in socks, we waited to snowball those cats. Sleek and long as jaguars and horrible whiskered, spitting and snarling, they would slink and sidle over the white back garden walls. And the lynx-eyed hunters, Jim and I, fur-capped and moccasined trappers from Hudson Bay off Mumbles Road, would hurl our deadly snowballs at the green of their eyes. The wise cats never appeared. We were so still. Eskimo-footed Arctic marksmen in the muffling silence of the eternal snows, eternal ever since Wednesday, that we never heard Mrs. Prothero's first cry from her igloo at the bottom of the garden, or if we heard it at all, it was to us like the far-off challenge of our enemy and prey, the neighbor's polar cat. But soon the voice grew louder. "Fire!" cried Mrs. Prothero as she beat the dinner gong. And we ran down to the garden, snowballs in our arms, toward the house. And smoke, indeed, was pouring out of the dining room, and the gong was bombulating. And Mrs. Prothero was announcing ruin like a town crier in Pompeii. This was better than all the cats in Wales, lined up, standing on the wall in a row. We bounded into the house laden with snowballs and stopped at the open door of the smoke-filled room. Something was burning, all right. Perhaps it was Mr. Prothero, who always slept after midday dinner with a newspaper over his face. But he was standing in the middle of the room saying, "A fine Christmas!" and smacking at the smoke with a slipper. "Call the fire brigade!" cried Mrs. Prothero as she beat the gong. "They won't be there," said Mr. Prothero. "It's Christmas!" There was no fire to be seen, only clouds of smoke, and Mr. Prothero standing in the middle, waving his slipper as though he were conducting. "Do something," he said. And we threw all of our snowballs into the smoke. I think we nearly missed Mr. Prothero and ran out of the house to the telephone box. "Let's call the police as well," Jim said, "and the ambulance. And Ernie Jenkins, he likes fires." But we only called the fire brigade. And soon the fire engine came, and 3 tall men in helmets brought a hose into the house, and Mr. Prothero got out just in time before they turned it on. Nobody could have had a noisier Christmas Eve. And when the firemen turned off the hose and were standing in the wet, smoky room, Jim's aunt, Miss Prothero, came downstairs and peered in at them. Jim and I waited very quietly to hear what she would say to them, because she said the right thing always. She looked at the 3 tall firemen in their shining helmets, standing among the smoke and cinders and dissolving snowballs, and she said, "Would you like anything to read?" Years and years ago, when I was a boy, when there were wolves in Wales and birds the color of red flannel petticoats whisked past the harp-shaped hills, when we sang and wallowed all night and day in caves that smelt like Sunday afternoons in damp front farmhouse parlors, and we chased with the jawbones of deacons the English and the bears, before the motor car, before the wheel, before the duchess-faced horse, when we rode the daft and happy hills bareback, it snowed and it snowed. But here a small boy says, "It snowed last year too, and I made a snowman, and my brother knocked it down, and I knocked my brother down, and then we had tea." "But that was not the same snow," I said. "Our snow was not only shaken from the whitewash buckets down the sky, it came shawling out of the ground and swam and drifted out of the arms and hands and bodies of the trees. Snow grew overnight on the roofs of the houses like a pure and grandfather moss, minutely ivied the walls, and settled on the postman opening the gate like a dumb, numb thunderstorm of white, torn Christmas cards." "Were there postmen then, too?" "With sprinkling eyes and wind-cherried noses, on spread, frozen feet they crunched up to the doors and mittened on them manfully. But all that the children could hear was the ringing of the bells." "You mean that the postman went rat-a-tat-tat and the doors rang?" "I mean that the bells the children could hear were inside them." "I only hear thunder sometimes, never bells." "There were church bells, too." "Inside them?" "No, no, no. In the bat-black, snow-white belfries, tugged by bishops and storks. And they rang their tidings over the bandaged town, over the frozen foam of the powder and ice cream hills, over the crackling sea. It seemed that all the churches boomed for joy under my window, and the weathercocks crew for Christmas on our fence." "Get back to the postman." "They were just ordinary postmen, fond of walking and dogs and Christmas and the snow. They knocked on doors with blue knuckles." "Ours has got a black knocker." And they stood on the white welcome mat in the little drifted porches and huffed and puffed, making ghosts with their breath, and jogged from foot to foot like small boys wanting to go out. And then the presents? And then the presents after the Christmas box. And the cold postman, with a rose on his button nose, tingled down the tea tray slithered run of the chilly, glinting hill. He went in his ice-bound boots like a man on fishmonger's slabs. He wagged his bag like a frozen camel's hump, dizzily turned the corner on one foot, and by God, he was gone. Get back to the presents. There were useful presents, engulfing mufflers of the old coach days, and mittens made for giant sloths, zebra scarves of a substance like silky gum that could be tug-of-warred down to the galoshes, blinding tam-o'-shanters like patchwork tea cozies and bunny-suited busbies and balaclavas for victims of head-shrinking tribes. From aunts who always wore wool next to the skin, there were mustached and rasping vests that made you wonder why the aunts had any skin left at all. And I once had a little crocheted nose bag from an aunt, alas, no longer whinnying with us, and pictureless books in which small boys, though warned not to, would skate on Farmer Giles' pond, and did, and drowned. And books that told me everything about the wasp except why. Go on to the useless presents. Oh, bags of moist and many-colored jelly babies, and a folded flag, and a false nose, and a tram conductor's cap, and a machine that punched tickets and rang a bell. Never a catapult. Once by mistake, no one could explain, a little hatchet. And a celluloid duck that made, when you pressed it, a most un-duck-like sound. A mewing moo that an ambitious cat might make who wished to be a cow. And a painting book in which I could make the grass, the trees, the sea, and the animals any color I pleased. And still the dazzling sky blue sheep are grazing in the red field under the rainbow-billed and pea-green birds. Hard-boileds, toffee, fudge, and all sorts, crunches, cracknels, humbugs, glaciers, marzipan, and butter Welsh for the Welsh. And troops of bright tin soldiers who, if they could not fight, could always run. And snakes and families and happy ladders. And easy hobby games for little engineers, complete with instructions. Oh, easy for Leonardo. And a whistle to make the dogs bark, to wake up the old man next door, to make him beat on the wall with his stick, to shake our picture off the wall. And a packet of cigarettes. You put one in your mouth and you stood on the corner of the street and you waited for hours in vain for an old lady to scold you for smoking a cigarette, and then with a smirk, you ate it. And then it was breakfast under the balloons. Were there uncles like in our house? There are always uncles at Christmas, the same uncles. And on Christmas morning, with dog-disturbing whistle and sugar fags, I would scour the swatched town for the news of the little world and find always a dead bird by the post office or by the white deserted swings. Perhaps a robin, all but one of his fires out. Men and women wading or scooping back from chapel with taproom noses and wind-bust cheeks, all albinos, huddled their stiff black jarring feathers against the irreligious snow. Mistletoe hung from the gas brackets in all the front parlors. And there was sherry and walnuts and bottled beer and crackers by the dessert spoons, and cats in their furabouts watched the fires. And the high-heaped fire spat, all ready for the chestnuts and mulling pokers. Some few large men sat in the front parlors without their collars, uncles almost certainly, trying their new cigars, holding them out judiciously at arm's length, returning them to their mouths, coughing, then holding them out again as though to wait for the explosion. And some few small aunts, not wanted in the kitchen, nor anywhere else for that matter, sat on the very edge of their chairs, poised and brittle, afraid to break like faded cups and saucers. Not many those mornings trod the piling streets. An old man, always, fawn-bowlered, yellow-gloved, and at this time of year with spats of snow, would take his constitutional to the white bowling green and back, as he would take it, wet or fire, on Christmas Day or Doomsday. Sometimes two hale young men with big pipes blazing, no overcoats, and wind-blown scarves would trudge, unspeaking, down to the forlorn sea to work up an appetite, to blow away the fumes, who knows, to walk into the waves until nothing was left of them but two furling smoke clouds of their inextinguishable briars. Then I would be slapdashing home, the gravy smell of the dinners of others, the bird smell, the brandy, the pudding and mince coiling up to my nostrils, when out of the snow-clogged side lane would come a boy the spit of myself, with a pink-tipped cigarette and the violent past of a black eye, cocky as a bullfinch, leering all to himself. I hated him on sight and sound, and would be about to put my dog whistle to my lips and blow him off the face of Christmas, when suddenly he, with a violent wink, put his whistle to his lips and blew so high, so stridently, so exquisitely loud, that the gobbling faces, their cheeks bulged with goose, would press against their tinseled windows the whole length of the white, echoing street. For dinner, we had turkey and blazing pudding. And after dinner, the uncles sat in front of the fire, loosened all buttons, and put their large, moist hands over their watch chains, groaned a little, and slept. Mothers, aunts, sisters scuttled to and fro, bearing tureens. Aunt Bessie, who had already been frightened twice by a clockwork mouse, whimpered at the sideboard and had some elderberry wine. The dog was sick. Aunt Dosey had to have 3 aspirins, but Auntie Hannah, who liked port, stood in the middle of the snowbound backyard singing like a big-bosomed thrush. I would blow up balloons to see how big they would blow up to, and when they burst, which they all did, the uncles jumped and scrambled and rumbled. In the rich and heavy afternoon, the uncles breathing like dolphins and the snow descending, I would sit among festoons and Chinese lanterns and nibble dates and try to make a model man-o-war following the instructions for little engineers, and produce what might be mistaken for a seagoing tramcar. Or I would go out, my bright new boots squeaking into the white world, onto the seaward hill to call on Jim and Dan and Jack, and to pad through the still streets, leaving huge footprints on the hidden pavements.
I bet people will think there's been hippos.
What would you do if you saw a hippo coming down our street?
I'd go like this, bang! And I'd throw him over the railings and I'd roll him down the hill, and then I'd tickle him under the ear and he'd wag his tail.
What would you do if you saw two hippos? Iron-flanked and bellowing he-hippos clanked and battered through the scudding snow toward us as we passed Mr. Daniel's house.
Let's post a snowball through Mr. Daniel's letterbox.
Let's write things in the snow. Let's write Mr. Daniel looks like a spaniel all over his lawn. Or we walked on the white shore.
Can the fishes see it snowing?
The silent, one-clouded heavens drifted onto the sea. Now we were the snow-blind travelers lost on the North Hills, and vast dew-lapped dogs with flasks around their necks ambled and shambled up to us, baying, "Excelsior!" We returned home through the poor streets where only a few children fumbled with bare red fingers in the wheel-rutted snow and catcalled after us, their voices fading away as we trudged uphill into the cries of the dock birds and the hooting of ships out in the whirling bay. And then at tea, the recovered uncles would be jolly, and the ice cake loomed in the center of the table like a marble grave. Auntie Hannah laced her tea with rum because it was only once a year. Bring out the tall tales now that we told by the fire, as the gaslight bubbled like a diver. Ghosts wooed like owls in the long nights when I dared not look over my shoulder. Animals lurked in the cubbyhole under the stairs, and the gas meter ticked. And I remember that we went singing carols once when there wasn't the shaving of a moon to light the flying streets. At the end of a long road was a drive that led to a large house, and we stumbled up the darkness of the drive that night, each one of us afraid, each one of us holding a stone in his hand in case, and all of us too brave to say a word. The wind through the trees made noises as of old and unpleasant and maybe web-footed men wheezing in caves. We reached the black bulk of the house.
What shall we give them then? Hark the herald?
No, Jack said. Good King Wenceslaus. I'll count 3. 1, 2, 3. And we began to sing, our voices high and seemingly distant in the snow-felted darkness round the house that was occupied by nobody we knew. We stood close together near the dark door. Good King Wenceslaus looked out on the feast of Stephen. And then a small, dry voice, like the voice of someone who has not spoken for a long time, joined our singing. A small, dry, eggshell voice from the other side of the door, a small, dry voice through the keyhole. And when we stopped running, we were outside our house. The front room was lovely. Balloons floated under the hot water bottle gulping gas. Everything was good again and shone over the town. Perhaps it was a ghost, Jim said.
Perhaps it was trolls,
Dan said, who was always reading. Let's go in and see if there's any jelly left, Jack said. And we did that. Always on Christmas night, there was music. An uncle played the fiddle. A cousin sang Cherry Ripe. And another uncle sang Drake's Drum. It was very warm in the little house. Auntie Hannah, who had got on to the parsnip wine, sang a song about bleeding hearts and death, and then another in which she said her heart was like a bird's nest. And then everybody laughed again, and then I went to bed. Looking through my bedroom window out into the moonlight and the unending smoke-colored snow, I could see the lights in the windows of all the other houses on our hill and hear the music rising up from the long, steady falling night. I turned the gas down. I got into bed. I said some words to the close and holy darkness, and then I slept. The end. Oh, that was fun. All right. All right. See, I can guarantee when Maggie and Bill and other people did it here, they did not have fake snowballs, which are a kind of a new invention. And when I was reading it, I was like, oh, we got to get those fake snowballs. It worked. So now, let's see, what do we got now? Oh, we are going to have an offertory. I figured we'd wait to ask you for money to see what you thought of the performance. So, and we've got Abby, and tell me your name again. Abby and Monica are going to give us a beautiful little piece of music here. Can I get 2 volunteers to take the collection? Maybe, yeah, you got it.
We're walking in the air. We're floating in the moonlit sky. The people far below are sleeping as we fly. I'm holding very tight. I'm riding in the midnight blue. I'm finding I can fly so high above with you. On across the world, the villages go by like dreams. The rivers and the hills, the forests and the streams. Children gaze open-mouthed, taken by surprise. Nobody down below believes their eyes. We're surfing in the air. We're swimming in the frozen sky. We're drifting over icy mountains floating by. suddenly swooping low on an ocean deep, rousing up a mighty monster from his sleep. We're walking in the air, we're dancing in the midnight sky, and everyone who sees us greets us as we fly.
Oh my gosh, that was so good! That was so good! All right, congregational snowball fight after service. Okay, so we're going to close with singing Good King Wenceslaus together. We have to do that, of course. Not only is it mentioned in the story, but this, read it as we're going through, because it's a great little story in itself, and we don't get to sing this carol very often. So let's rise if you are willing and able. The carol is printed in your order of service. Come on and sing with us. Good King Wenceslaus looked out on the feast of Stephen, when the snow lay round about, deep and crisp and even. Brightly shone the moon that night, though the frost was cruel. When a poor man came in sight, gathering winter fuel. Hither, page, and stand by me, if thou know'st it telling. Yonder peasant, who is he? Where and what his dwelling? Sire, he lives a good league hence, underneath the mountain, right against the forest fence, by St. Agnes' fountain. Skip that one that repeats. Go to the next one. Bring me flesh and bring me wine, bring me pine logs hither, though and I shall see him dine, when we bear them thither. Page and monarch, forth they went together, through the rude wind's wild lament, and the bitter weather. Sire, the night is darker now, and the wind blows stronger. Fails my heart, I know not how, I can go no longer. Mark my footsteps, good my page, tread thou in them boldly. Thou shalt find the winter's rage freeze thy blood less coldly. In his master's step he trod, where the snow lay tinted. Heat was in the very sod which the saint had printed. Therefore, Christian men, be sure, wealth or rank possessing, he who now will bless the poor shall Closing words from Dylan Thomas. Though they may go mad, they shall be sane. Though they sink through the sea, they shall rise again. Though lovers be lost, love shall not, and death shall have no dominion. Hold fast, my friends. We love you. Stay strong. Live long and prosper. Go in peace. A blessed solstice to you all. Join us for solstice service next week. Yasmin and the kids, it's going to be great. All right, now sit down for the postlude. If you bring your snowballs to the front of the sanctuary, please.